going, everyone? It's Barles, and welcome back to another episode of the AFL Fantasy Head-to-Head series on my YouTube channel. So we're continuing the theme of guests jumping on. We have, remember the coaches panel, MiniMonk. Monk, mate, how you going?
Yeah, I'm going pretty well. It's all that tinkering going on at the moment. We're in the beginning of February, and it's just a few weeks away from being able to see some actual AFL being played.
Oh, I love it. It's great. Can't wait for the football season to get underway. And the best part about it is, about preseason, is talking about all these relevant fantasy players. So two of the players that we're going to be talking about today, I know one of them is one of your favorites. So we're talking about two defenders that are going to be vying for a lot of people's D2 or D3 spots. And they're potentially going to push themselves up and around those top six defenders. And we're talking about Hayden Young and Nick Daicos. So in terms of prices, these guys are going to set you back. Hayden Young is going to set you back $776,000, and Nick Daicos is going to set you back $769,000. So you can see why they're so close. Only the 7K difference between them. So they're definitely relevant. Two of the most popular names the preseason. So first off, we'll start with the more expensive guy, Hayden Young. Monk, mate, why should people be looking at Hayden Young to start their season?
Well, I think it's exactly the reason you just talked about. People are trying to find the value down back. You're trying to find a top six defender at around about that sub 800K marker. And Young is a player that has shown that he has the ability to be able to do that. He had his first full season last year where he played 20 games. He only missed a couple of games due to COVID, and that happens to a lot of players. And he averaged 88. And, you only need about 6 or 7 more points of upside to be able to be a top six defender from that point. And he's got the ability to be able to do that. His natural progression, he's going to get better. Free love to put the ball in his hands. And by the sounds of it, this preseason, he's on kicking duty. He's ahead of Ryan now. I mean, that's a piece of gossip that a lot of people have missed. He's ahead of Luke Ryan on kick-in duty. And Luke Ryan had basically a monopoly on kick-ins last year for Freo. And Young wasn't even second for Freo. He was third. He was behind Brennan Cox. So you're telling me that Young might get 50, 60 more kick-ins in a year over 24 games. That's 5 points of inbuilt value right there. You only need a couple more points of increasing in scoring, and he's a top six defender at a really, really nice price. And he's got a good consistency. He doesn't pop bad scores. He's got a really nice floor. He's shown that he has a ceiling. He's popped a few 120 games. And yeah, I really like the pick. I think he's being slept on a lot. And I think a lot of that is due to the hype associated with the player you're going to talk about in Daicos. But you look at the ownership percentages between them. Daicos is owned by 40% of people currently. Young's in the 10% marker. I mean, maybe people need to be paying a bit more attention to the player that's only 7K more expensive.
Yeah, it's funny how one is so much more talked about and a lot more hype, but then Young is sitting at just like around that 10% mark, as you say. And the thing that I took most from the episode you did with MJ on the coaches panel, if you guys haven't checked it out, make sure it is just a very good in-depth analysis just on Hayden Young. So do go check that out. But the thing I took from that is his consistency. He didn't, you probably got the stat there in front of you, but he hardly went under 80 all year. How many games exactly did he go under 80?
20 games, he went 16 over 80. So only 4 games he went under 80. And I think a couple of them were in the 70s, and a couple of them were very weird games against the Eagles. I've heard some people saying that he got a bit of attention from Jamie Cripps in those games, which, wouldn't surprise me. But yeah, it's still unbelievable consistency to say that if he had 2 tag games and then only 2 other games below 80, it's not bad.
Yeah, and the one note I'll say that he probably has over Daicos is that a lot of people like talking about Daicos, but I don't think Young is going to be a failed pick. It's just going to be how good a pick is he going to be, because at worst he's going to give you an average of 85, and I'm talking worst because his consistency is ridiculous. So he's going to give you those 80s and 90 scores and hopefully those ceiling scores, but we have seen with Daicos that he is that main distributor out at the back, and he's going to cop more attention than what Young is. So he's going to have a lower floor. We did see some scores in the 50s and 60s, even the back end of last year, even though Daicos did go a couple of big scores there. We did see that he can be affected with tags, especially obviously with your likes, your Ryan Clarks and your Windhagers that are likely going to go to Daicos. So that is one thing I would be taking with Young there as well. So what else did you have with Hayden Young? There's plenty to talk about with Young.
Yeah, you were just saying there about the tag threat, and I think that that's very valid. And there's some people thinking that Young would be the tag threat for Freo, and I can see it, but I don't see it as much. I think they're more likely to go for Jordan Clark with his running carry and his ability to break lines. Like Young breaks lines based off of his 45-degree kicks, not by getting the ball and then distributing the ball like someone like Daicos does, where he runs and carries. And I think the other reason why I like Young a bit more than Daicos is he plays for a fantasy-friendly team at a very fantasy-friendly ground. Freo love to do switches of the balls, plus six it from one side of Optus to the other. And Daicos plays for a team that's known for just trying to get the ball in, get it into the inside 50 as fast as they can. And that's not saying that that's going to affect Daicos from being able to average 85, 90, 95, but it hurts. Like if you've got a team that's scoring a lot more fantasy points, especially across their back six, which Freo do, then it can only mean that there's more upside for a player that, you know, the team already wants to put it into their hands. And they've talked about Young being the main distributor for them for 2023, which makes sense because of how good of a kick he is. And he's had one good season now where he's been able to string it all together. And I can only see that that continues to increase from there.
Yeah. And we know for a fact he is one of the best kicks in the AFL. I'm just actually, I don't know if you've got it in front of you, I'm just getting him up here. His scores in the finals last year, did you have them in front of you? Because I know that he did do quite well in the finals.
I don't have them on me exactly, but I think he popped a 99 and a 130 odd. It was a couple of pretty good games. But it is worth noting that one of those games was against the Dogs. And, you know, defenders against the Dogs last year was just, you're racking in good scores. But to score, I think he scored a 99 against Collingwood, which is still a great score, especially in finals level footy.
Yeah, I noticed him a lot more as well. Like I noticed him throughout the year anyway, but he did seem to even take another step during the finals as well. Like he did play a pretty important role in Freo's comeback against the Dogs. And then even though they lost to Collingwood, he still played a pretty pivotal role back there. So he's definitely one. Do you see any negative with Hayden Young? Maybe potentially his ceiling like might not be as high as maybe, I know we're not Doherty and stuff like that, but maybe does Daicos got that little bit more of a ceiling?
I think the ceiling argument is somewhat valid, but I looked at the stats into it and it's 100 plus, they went even. And Daicos had two more games, and 120 plus, they also went even, and Daicos had 22 games. So the ceiling argument might be there. I think Daicos is the type of player that demands the ball a lot more. I mean, there's a lot of talk about how he basically demanded the ball for Pendlebury in his first game of AFL, and you don't see Young having that piggish type behavior, which might hurt his ability to pop a 160 or a 150 type score, but he can easily still get a 110, 120 type score on a week-to-week basis. And in reality, that's enough to put you at a top 6 defender level or even a top 10 defender level. And that's all he has to get to. He only has to just get to that, 94, 95 marker to be in the conversation about being a top 6 defender. And I've just got the stats now. He's got 122 and 98 in the two finals games. So an average of 110. I mean, especially in finals type footy. It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Especially when it's a lot harder to score in the finals. But yeah, I do think the more I've heard about Young, I was saying you off camera that at the start of the preseason, I wasn't really on Young. I thought there was a lot of mouths to feed, but the more I've heard, the more coming out of preseason, the more I've thought about it, I think, well, he has got that upside, especially if he's got those kick-ins. And then again, just improvement again, because we saw a big jump last year. And then again, he's gonna just naturally improve more. So you add that in, and then if he's getting kick-ins, there is definitely value you can definitely see there. So it is going to be very interesting. But I will talk about Nick Daicos a little bit now, and then we'll say who we would pick out of the two. But yeah, Nick Daicos, there's not many players in the AFL that have come in and had a first year like he has had, especially his second half of the year. So I'm just getting the stats up here that of his back half of the year. So from round 12 onwards, he averaged 96, and that included the final scores of 90, 96, and 99. So that would mean that he'd be the 6th highest averaging defender of last year if you just took in his second half of the year. So it's a bump from him in the back half of the year. The first half, he still put up some good scores, but wasn't quite as good the second half of the year. And if you're putting that into what he's priced at this year, there's a bit of value already there. And then, as we said, with Young, put on top of that natural improvement, second year. We have seen some of these players break out in their second year, like your Olivers and your Transit, I know they're the midfielders, but we have seen these, let's say, special players in their second year have broken out. So a lot of people are saying that Daicos is going to do it. He's owned by, I think, near 50% of the competition already. He's one of the most selected picks. So, again, that could be risky going against him if he was to get off to an amazing start. You want to be on that train. If you're not, you could be playing catch up. Whereas if you're looking at a young, if he doesn't quite work out, but then Daicos does, then that could maybe potentially put you behind the ball. So, but yeah, and we know for a fact as well, Nick Daicos has been a gun in his juniors, an average of 136 in the NAB league. So it was just ridiculous, averaging nearly 36 disposals. I know that was in the midfield, but when a guy can get his hands on the ball, he can get his hands on the ball. So, and I expect him to get a bit more midfield time as well. We have heard rumours of him pushing up the ground into the midfield, and Penderbury has been spending more time defence. So does he get that midfield time that we want? We want our defenders really playing midfield. That we've seen the best defenders of the past, like even like your Mills and your Lairds that lost it last year. The year before, when they were playing midfield, they were guns for us in defence. So if you can get a defender playing midfield, that's really all you can ask for. So what's your stance with Nick Daicos heading in 2023, Monk?
Well, I just wanted to throw a question back at you based off of what you just said there. Are you worried about Daicos playing midfield as opposed to being, on a cushy halfback role? Do you think it's going to increase his scoring or be about even? Or is there concerns that he might actually decrease his scoring with spending time in the midfield?
That it is a very good point you raised, because we did see Crisp go in there and his scoring did decrease. We have seen guys like Jaden Short go in there and decrease. So more midfield time doesn't always necessarily mean that they're going to increase their output in terms of scoring. But I think Nick Daicos is quite different to those guys, because we've seen like just players playing defense and other positions where they don't demand the football. Like, I guess Young probably could fit a little bit into that. Like he's more about wanting to, it's team first, and then he's just that good a player that he just gets his own ball anyway. Whereas Daicos is, again, he wants the team to do well, but he demands the ball. He wants to get the ball. So I think you're moving in the midfield wouldn't really, I don't think it would increase his scoring exponentially to go from being like, let's say, just 95 to, he's not going to average 105 in the midfield. I think he's going to do about the same as what he would do in defense, because I think he finds space around the ground to get the ball. And he just, even if he gets a little bit of attention, he can just work his way around space and get the ball. So, yeah, I don't think that the moving in the midfield will be the big flag. I think the flag's the tag. I think the tag is going to be what potentially could be there, because, as you mentioned, Young is a very important player for Fremantle, but I don't see him getting the tag. As you said, I think Jordan Clark is more likely to get the tag, or if they're going to go for a midfield, it'd be like your Brayshaws or someone like that, whereas Young, I think, will roam free. Whereas Nick Daicos is arguably Collingwood's best player already after 1 year.
Yeah, you could make that argument.
Definitely top five. So, but yeah, that tag risk, is that probably the one flag you'd put on Daicos?
Yeah, it's definitely a big flag. I mean, he already copped tags in his first year. I mean, Ryan Clark did a job of him late in the season, and he didn't score well with it. And I think the other flag is that if you think that Daicos can be a top six defender, then that's great. I still think he probably can as well. I think he's definitely got the upside to be able to do that. But what scares me is his flaw, his ability to be able to drop a bad game compared to someone like Young. I think if he drops a sub 80 game, like a 50 or a 60 from a heavy tag, and you own him, you're losing out on others who've got a defender that's popped in 80, 85, and you're allowing other people to be able to jump onto him, because there is a world where Daicos starts the year and he goes 105, 105, 110. He goes into that 850K bracket and he's gotten away from people. But people who lose him at that point, they're just going to say, all right, I'll upgrade to him later in the season when his price comes back down, because I think that there's a lot more of that. There's the prospect of that happening for Daicos, whereas I don't see it happening as much for Young. I don't see there being a point in the year where Young's price gets much cheaper than what it is now. And that can be a differential in players that are so similarly priced and you think are going to average very similarly, is when can I get onto the player?
Yeah, no, very good point there. I think that both of them are very, very good picks. But it is time now to go head-to-head. So, Monk, who would you be picking out of Nick Daicos and Hayden Young to start in your team for Fantasy 2023?
Look, it's a really tricky one because I'm not just basing my answer on what I think they can perform at, but also you have to consider ownership when it's coming to players like this. And Daicos, owning him mitigates a lot of the ownership risk, but I think I want to take the community on with someone like Young this year because I think that he's got the ability to exceed, if not match, Daicos. And for the reason I said before, I don't think his price is going to get much cheaper. So yeah, I would have Young over Daicos.
Yeah, it's for me. This is a very tough one because, as you mentioned, the ownership and we know Daicos has probably got the highest ceiling. We have seen the 147s, but I think that there's just a one like the flag of the tag and the lower floor is probably what sways me more to Young because I know that the ownership's there for Nick Daicos, but I like my defenders to have a safe floor, but can also have a ceiling. And then because I like my midfielders and forwards to have that ceiling, whereas defenders, I just want them to, if they can all go like 90s plus, then that's ideal. So I think we've mentioned Hayden Young's consistency and his really high floor. I don't see him having really many games at all below 70, whereas we have seen Nick Daicos can cop attention. So for that, I would probably go Hayden Young, but it is a very, very interesting one. And it's definitely, this is one of the episodes I'm looking forward to because it is a very, very close one. So, but
it's a
in
near
saying that
flip.
though, yeah, exactly right. It's coin flip there. In saying that though, do you have one? I would imagine you've probably got Young, but do you also have Daicos as well, or is he in the mix? What's happening with your side with those two?
I've toyed with structures that actually have both, and I've toyed with them at D2 and D3, and actually even at D3 and D4, and running a bit more deep down back. And I like some of the structures that I have with both of them, but my current structure just has the one, and it is Young, and he is currently sitting at D3 for me at the moment. I have had structures where he's at D2 as well with no Daicos, but for now he's at D3 and he's by himself. How about yourself?
I currently don't have either, which is funny because I said that on the first episode with Liam from Free Kick. If you haven't watched that first one, do check it out. Josh Kelly and Bonapelli going head to head there, but I don't have either at the moment. But they're right there. I said I have a squad of 150, 200 players at this stage of the preseason, but these two are at the top end of that. They're right in the mix because at the moment I've got a Dawson at D2 and Dockett at D1, so I've gone a bit more expensive. But I did mention to you off camera that the value is there with Daicos and Young. So probably going a Dawson or even a Dockett if I wanted to go that far down, more like Dawson down to a Daicos or a Young. I think that's probably going to be more beneficial to maybe use that cash elsewhere. So, yeah, both only my team at the moment, but definitely high on the list. So it's going to be very interesting to see who comes out on top at the end of the year. But they're definitely going to be two players that are going to be talked about a lot more leading up to the season.
Absolutely.
So, perfect. That's episode 3 done. If you haven't checked out the first 2 episodes, make sure you go and do that. The Josh Kelly and Marcus Bonapelli episode with Liam, and then the Connor Rosen, Zach Butters episode with Louis. Make sure you go and check those 2 out. And then, thank you for jumping on, MiniMonk. Where can the people find you on the socials and at the coaches panel?
Yeah, so I've been on a few of the 50 most relevant podcasts with MJ on the coaches panel through this preseason, and I'll be spending a bit more time on some podcasts with them through the season. And I'm on Twitter at MiniMonk10. So if you ever want to hit me up with a DM or you got a question about a team, just feel free to shoot me a message as well.
Yeah, 100%. I'll be probably doing that we use throughout the season. I do it with everyone I know. I can't seem to get my head around like what trades I do. I overthink everything. So, but yeah, make sure you go and follow him and follow the coaches panel as well for all the great content there. And I'll leave everything where you can follow him in the socials in the description below. So we'll catch you guys in episode 4, which will be next week. So thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys then. We're out. Cheers.